Okay.
Hey, Jim Toscano here, and welcome to the Monday night live stream, Filling in the Grooves, episode 115, the interviews. So this has been such a trip and so fun interviewing drummers, colleagues, friends, my heroes, all the people that inspire us as drummers. As I always say, there's no, the drumming community is pretty incredible, right? There's no bassoon community getting together doing this stuff. It's drummers, man. It's it's a whole different thing. So tonight I have a really amazing guest. Before I bring him in though, I just want to mention some companies: Offset Pedals, Prologic's Percussion, Sabian Cymbals, of course, Black Magic Designs, Vader Drumsticks, Focusrite Audio, and my guest is also a Sabian artist, and we probably have some other companies to promote. But just, all the companies that I mentioned they're like families in this industry, and it's really about people and of course the products, but it's about the people. And that's how we make these connections and why we make these connections. So big shout out to all of the companies that I really love, and they've been so supportive. So my guest tonight is, I would say, a triple threat. The double threat part is definitely a drummer and a percussionist, but he's also an amazing educator. He's currently out on tour with Chicago, which is a full circle moment that we have to get into, how that exactly happened. And he's also played with Santana. He's played with Tanya Maria, which I didn't even realize because I was going through his full discography. Jackson Brown, Boz Scaggs, Gloria Estefan, Traffic, Steve Winwood, Johnny Hallyday, if you don't know, from France, Khaled, Mickey Hart, man, so many artists. My guest tonight, Walfredo Reyes Jr. Here he is. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I hope that intro was okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was very toned down, right? Very mellow intro. Man, and you have some products that I just wanted to talk about real quick. Your instructional video. So Global Beats for Drum Set and Percussion, which is an incredible video. If you don't have it, guys, drummers, percussionists, grab it. Musicians alike. And then also Wally World, which, by the way, I meant to, as I was bringing you in, hit a little music. So wait, real quick. Oh, yeah. This is like a global roadmap, this CD. It's just amazing the travels through the world that appear on this CD. And combinations of things too. It's like a cornucopia of influences, right? Just exactly. Amazing. And what was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh, Jamming at the Baked Potato, another record, which, by the way, you guys could download these on Spotify, iTunes for sure, because that's where I downloaded everything. Or perhaps if you can find physical copies, good luck, because it's so hard to come by these days, right? It's really hard to find. But the music is great. And I also, in the description of the video, I have Walfredo's website is there. So make sure that you visit his website, check it out. You can also find the Chicago tour dates there. Really, really super important to check out what's going on. You're playing at the top of your game. I don't know how you just keep plugging away, but it's a beautiful thing. And I also want to mention that we just spoke about your dad. We had a great conversation about your father, who is also just an incredible triple threat and still doing it at like almost 90 years old, right?
Yes. He's 89 and rocking. I just saw him recently, and drums and music is his pleasure points.
Yeah.
That's where he functions the best.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, I have a great picture. I'll try to pull it up during the live stream that I took with him in, I think it was 2018 at NAMM. And he was funny, he just cracking jokes and so sweet. And we were hanging by the Sabian booth and just, kind of talking shop. But he was looking great then, and I know he's still doing it, man. So it's great. So Chicago, and I know I'm going to get into your story from the very beginning, but I know that for a fact that the first record you ever bought with your own money, which is a question that I always ask everyone, what was the first record you bought with your own money, was Chicago Traffic Authority, right? Transit Authority, CTA, with your own money. And then it's like a full circle thing that you're playing with those guys.
No, I can't even figure it out myself.
How incredible. So are there sort of pinch me moments with this band where you're just like playing and then going like, oh my God, this is just surreal? I know it's been a long time. You've been with them for a long time now, from playing percussion with them to then going to drum set. But do you ever find those moments?
All the time.
Yeah.
In fact, with the bassist with Chicago, Eric Baines, he came on the bus the other night, just the other night before the tour, this leg of the tour ended, and he goes, man, I was talking to Robert about, the restaurant and what we ate at dinner and this restaurant and the other restaurant in the hotel, and we're talking about food, and all of a sudden he said, I stepped back and I'm talking to Robert Lamb. And that happens to me a lot sometimes. I see Robert, from a distance, and Robert and Jimmy and Lee, they're exactly that when we're working together. Hey, tell Jimmy, where's Lee? Hey, Lee. But all of a sudden you step back and you go, man, these guys are Songwriters Hall of Fame, Chicago, the band, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I was hearing these songs on the radio. And of course, my dad was such a jazz musician that when Chicago and also Blood, Sweat and Tears, later on Tower of Power and Cold Blood, the bands that had horns, those were my dad's favorite. So when I played, when this song came on the radio with the horns and all that, my dad went, who's that? He goes like, that's a band called CTA. And nobody knew it was called Chicago back then. It was just like CTA. And I loved that. It was Beginnings, actually, that came on the radio. And then I'm a Man started playing. Then I went to Gemco after I mowed the lawn and got $10 and bought the record.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, when did you move to Nevada?
Well, it was really an incredible, like a lot happened that year. So it was 1969, as you know, a lot happened. So
yeah.
Lunar landing and Woodstock. And in fact, I knew about Woodstock, and my friend said, like, can we sell a lot of tie-dye t-shirts and our parents will let us fly to, my dad and mom will never let me do that. No. And so I remember, I started lessons. I was like 12, 13. I started a lesson with my dad. He put me on a pad. I wanted to play drums, but he put me on a pad with the Buddy Rich, Henry Adler book and a metronome, which I thank him up until now, because I didn't realize the influence of a metronome back then.
Yeah.
And so every lesson was with the metronome, rudiments with the metronome, and then you up the tempo until you arrive at the breaking point and you go, okay, now I know what I can do and cannot do. And then when my dad in 1969, around it was almost like the beginning of 70, he got a job in Las Vegas. And at the beginning was the Thunderbird Hotel with a production. So we decided to go to Vegas. We sold everything, and my mom and 5 kids stayed behind. And then my dad was there already getting a house. And then before we left, we had to pack the Rogers kit that my dad was using back in Puerto Rico, which is actually, I don't know if you see it, but I basically set it up right there. That's a Rogers 1961 drum set that later on I used in high school and UNLV. But back then, that set was in the house, and I set it up without his permission because I was still, remember, on the practice pad.
Right.
And he wouldn't let me sit on the drum set yet. And so I set up the set, bass drum, snare drum, and hi-hat And my first beat on the drums was Honky Tonk Woman.
Right.
With a 45 I had. And then we moved to Vegas, and it got, more progressive, more
Wow.
lessons. And then I started getting lessons with another teacher that used to work at the Hilton. I don't know if you saw the Elvis movie,
Right.
but in the International, the percussionist in the band that played with Elvis when he came there was Leo Camera, and he was a great percussionist and drum teacher. So he started me, and he told my dad, look, man, the kid's got to have fun. So half hour is going to be rudiments and reading, and the next half hour is going to be drum set and fills and rock beats and stuff like
Nice.
that. My dad went, oh, okay. So thank you, Leo.
Because your teacher said it, so your dad went along with it.
Yeah.
I wanna back up to one thing though. So, I mean, you're growing up in a household obviously with a history of music, and your grandfather a trumpeter, right? And also, was he a contractor or he was an arranger? But did he organized orchestras, right?
Yeah, my grandfather was in the 1930s and 40s with a famous band in Cuba,
Yeah.
Casino de la Playa, was a balladeer singer. Miguelito Valdez was the singer, which actually Desi Arnaz took the inspiration from Miguelito Valdez, Mr. Babalu. The original Babalu was Miguelito Valdez with my
God.
grandfather's band. And then Desi, as I understand, tried to hire my grandfather many times, but he didn't want to leave Cuba because he had my dad as a baby, And so my grandfather and then my uncles, my mother's side of the family, they're all like musicians. So I always grew up with warming up, saxophonist, warming up, my dad, so those were the usual noises in the house. And then of course, when we arrived in Vegas, we soundproofed our room, our 2-car garage. And then it was like a little exodus that happened in that time, 1970, 71. Alex Acuna moved from Puerto Rico also to Las Vegas, and he was living in an apartment and he couldn't practice his drums. So he set up his fives drums, kind of like Billy Cobham, in my garage.
Oh my God.
He can practice. So then he was definitely a teacher, percussion and drum set. And many jam sessions happen in that garage, including Louis Bellson, Alan Dawson, to name a few. So I was very lucky. Mary Spivak came into that garage to give my dad a drum lesson. And of course, I was there.
Wow.
And, basically it was a molar, but the way he never mentioned molar. He mentioned like squeeze, release.
Right.
He's in, and he started my dad on the stick and drill.
Yeah.
Roger Stone, like da, 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 da. So I started practicing the same things. And the rest is history, between Alex and then all the musicians that came through Vegas, Don Elias with Lou Rawls, and then Luis Conte. And then I started getting into the high school jazz ensemble. And then we went to LA to do the Orange County Jazz Festival. And I met a high school drummer over there. I thought it was fantastic. Even then, he had a right cymbal that reminded me of John Guerin Threshold album. Pat, I forgot who's, but anyways, like I went backstage and I met him. It was Carlos Vega.
Oh my God.
And so he said, man, you got an incredible ear, because that cymbal, it is John Guerin's. And I bought it because I got some lessons from John Guerin and I love the cymbal so much. I said, how can I buy the cymbal from you? And he goes, okay.
Really?
And so Carlos had that John Guerin cymbal. So when I went back and I said, man, you sound like John Guerin and that cymbal, then he went, okay, what's your name? So the reason I actually mentioned these names is because many years later, when I decided to move to Los Angeles, if it wasn't for Luis Conte, Alex Acuna, Carlos Vega, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at.
Well, I think you would have found your way there eventually, but as you said, mentioning these guys, these are the relationships that you build in the industry, and so there's mentors, and then there's those people that recognize that you have that thing, and then the recommendations come. So it's quite incredible that you met him at the time that you did. Rest in peace, Carlos Vega. What a great, talented drummer, percussionist, amazing. For me, I saw him many times with James Taylor, and really was heartbroken when the world lost him. But what a great feel and pocket, and what a great person to have that influence on you.
Yeah, and amazing. And you know what? Like you said, it comes around. And not long ago, I actually open up. Because when I do any band, I'm kind of like, what do you call it? OCD. So basically, I study. If I'm going to tour with Steve Winwood, I know what pant size, what shirt size, what he drinks. The same thing with women artists. I want to know what her favorite color, what her favorite flowers, her perfume, everything that artist is about, and the whole discography. So when I was doing Chicago, I didn't know that Carlos played on "You're My Inspiration."
Wow,
that was Carlos Vega.
Yeah.
David Foster hired him when they did, and that became a huge hit.
Enormous.
You're my inspiration. So every night when I play, and I always said this, I channel, unless I play on the tracks like the latest album or a couple of other albums, Chicago albums, but mostly the hits of Chicago is Danny Serafin, Tristan Bowden, and whoever played on that cut, which happens to be Carlos. I don't know if he did any other Chicago tune, but I always dig deep.
Man.
The drummers and the songs, the story behind it.
It's almost like immersing yourself in a role. You have a brother who's a famous actor. Immersing yourself in a role the way an actor would, where you you become that music, right? So the immersion, even into the little details, are what bring it to life, I think, right? So
that's a very important thing that you said, because I read the guy actually that did Elvis. I forgot the guy's name right now, but he did Elvis, and he immersed himself so much in that Elvis role that he had a tough time getting out of it.
Right.
He was like possessed, Yeah. And it happens to me when I do a tour. Sometimes I have to go to the drum, and that's a battle within me. Because I always try to be a versatile player that can make a living playing percussion, any styles, drumming, any styles. So when I actually do, for example, Johnny Halliday, which was a very hard rock, arms, loud, changing drum heads almost every show. You're not playing thin and sticks. You're not playing fingers. You're not playing brushes. You're not playing a lot of syncopation. So, and the vice versa happens. When I was with Joe Sample, it was a trio. So I was playing brushes, very quiet, thin sticks. So my arms got out of shape. You know what I'm saying? So drummers, as you know, drums are fingers, wrists, and arms. And we have to keep them continuously in shape. And all the instruments of percussion keep in shape for when that time comes.
Right.
Because you don't know when it comes.
That's right. Your preparedness has to meet opportunity.
Exactly.
And if they don't come together, someone else is on that gig, right? Oh,
yeah.
Man.
It's almost like a very difficult thing to do. Sometimes you get somebody calls you and goes, "Hey man, can you do this tour like a month from now?" And you start preparing. But sometimes you just get the call and basically you got to do it.
Yeah.
And I've done it where I'm not in shape for the job that I said yes to, and I pay the price. Oh my God, okay, I got to spend the money now on a chiropractor and a masseuse.
Yeah. You get in shape real quick though.
Exactly.
Oh man, it's funny, thinking of method actors as an analogy for what musicians have to go through when they're stepping into another situation. And I know you also bring the analogy of being like a chef into that analogy into music as well, like knowing all of the ingredients and spices and types of food is the same kind of thing that you do as a percussionist and a drummer, where you have to be able to do a Brazilian gig, you have to be able to play a heavy rock gig, you have to be able to play, straight ahead jazz, whatever the gig calls for, that you have those ingredients, you're prepared, all your knives are sharpened, right? And you're ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The stick bag is your knives, your kitchenware. And you're right. And when I go, my wife and I like to travel, and we're foodies, as they call.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see, a chef, with that category. So what I strive for is to be a chef. Even if I'm playing a simple beat or something like that, it's like, call it a hamburger beat or whatever. It's something that, even a hamburger beat has to be quality. So quality in everything. Even if you give a kid okay, what would you like? A paella? Oh my God, that's complex. Or Chopino. Oh my God, there's a lot of seafood and a lot of preparedness. And then the kid wants a hot dog. But even at that point, you have to really give the best hot dog you can, because that family might come back because of that hot dog.
Right.
The kid goes, I want to go to that restaurant. So everything you need, that's something that I learned from Louis Belson a long time ago. And I actually did a blog about it, and I think it's somewhere in my website. Louis Belson in a high school, he was guest, and he goes, I did all kinds of gigs when I was growing up, and whether it's a bar mitzvah, a wedding, a happy birthday, just because it's not like a jazz club and whatever, it's like you have to do everything well. And what happened to me was that I was doing a gig in LA in the 1980s, making a living, paying the bills. And I was doing a wedding, and some of the musicians were kind of goofing off a little bit. And I was taking it really serious. And then I went to the bathroom, and this guy was there, and I said, man, you sound really great, man. And he started talking about drums, and Gene Krupa brought the set to the front of the stage. Phil Collins now brought that big sound in the front. It's about time we do more on the drummers. And I'm going, man, yes, I agree with you. He goes, by the way, I'm the father of the bride. This is my card if you ever need something. And he was vice president of Warner Brothers.
Oh my God. See?
So you meet that guy in the bathroom, and you think everybody else is goofing off, and you're playing brushes and playing bossa novas and all that, and the guy is listening.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Bring your A game to everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And I've told this thing before, but you're on a club date or something like that, like a wedding gig or something, and you never know also who's in the band, because when I was a kid, I just remember being maybe 16 or 17 playing a wedding, and the trombone player was Tom Bones Malone, who was in Zappa's band. And I was like, man, I go, what are you doing on this gig? And he goes, the same thing as you, making money. And I was like, yeah. And then I was glad that I was taking it serious. I was playing as well as I could, because you never know who you're going to meet or what opportunities might come up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
especially after that pandemic, isn't that unbelievable that you can actually make money doing anything it is, but doing what you love, which is playing your instrument.
Right.
Make money playing your instrument. So I started that really young, thanks to actually my stepmom, not even my dad. My stepmom was I was raised with my stepmom because my real mom died when I was 5 in Cuba. We left Cuba.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Me and my sister with my dad, we left everything behind. Then came my grandfather and all my uncles. And then my dad married Matilda, which is my stepmom. She raised me. And so it was unbelievable, but she was tough, man. It was the girls do a lot of the work that you got to know how to cook and this and that. And you guys go out there and make some money. I go, what do you mean? Wash cars, go and ask all the neighbors if they need their cars washed. Go and mow lawns or do gardening, pick up the garbage or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Go out there and do something. And so that she installed that however you can. So mowing lawns and doing gardening was one. And then as soon as I started playing some percussion and having fun in the beach with other people, playing percussion and playing congas while I was studying drum set, we started playing Christmas songs in Puerto Rico and people would give us money.
Wow.
So, you know, that's the taste of like, I'm doing what I love and I'm getting some money.
Ding. Right? Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And I know, you know, you mentioned about mowing lawns, and that's how you bought that first record. And then sort of early on that because you were into rock and roll, your dad was more of a jazz musician, percussionist, and so you mentioned Honky Tonk Woman being sort of an inspiration, but also mentioning about thinking that Charlie Watts was playing the cowbell part and the drum set, and then that kind of planted that seed about drum set and percussion at the same time, which, you know, me seeing people do that later on, not realizing that your father was one of the pioneers of that, really. And then
my dad, his story, he can tell it better, but what happened is that in Cuba, the tourists that came from United States, you know, they wanted to hear also, you know, foxtrot, swing, jazz ballads. So they had like the American music band, and then you had the Latin combo, which was like the Latin music. And then they will dance the cha-cha-cha and the mambo and the whatever. But, you know, my dad, instead of having two setups, so instead of like, okay, so now I got to like step off my drum kit and go over there to the timbales and the cymbal and this and that, and the congas, why do I not put the timbales on the drum set like you guys move, but I'm here. So like I'm going to play swing, jazz, brushes on my snare drum. Then I'm going to turn around and play timbales.
Wow.
And congas. So basically, and then he started mixing little by little, a little kick with the kick drum on the cymbal, which back then that was not happening.
Right.
There was no bass drum on the timbales on the Latin band. That came later, much later on, but my dad was already doing it in that time out of like, I don't know, laziness or convenience. Instead of having two different setups, you have one and you play for the jazz band and for the Latin band in one setup.
Wow. A lot of ingenuity comes from just a practical application, right? It was like, it was more practical to keep it all together. Whether it was laziness or ingenuity, whatever it was, I mean, it created something different and something new, especially at that time. No one else was really doing that, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, not many people. I remember even Tito Puente, my dad, even though, you know, there were like really, really good friends eventually, you know, like, but even Tito Puente at that time going, what are you doing playing like kick drum with Latin music? And, you know, and at that time, my dad was just crazy, like, you know, to go against the grain. Sometimes you get some criticism sometimes. By the way, I'm noticing that I got the window open and that was my light, but it's sunsetting over here and I'm getting darker.
Oh my God.
But you know, I gotta actually, I didn't prepare for this early, but I have some lights over there that I can actually put.
Yeah, if you need to flip them on, yeah, whatever. That's great.
Because the sunset, I thought it was going to be light a lot longer, but
I'll tell you a funny story. A few weeks ago, I had Annika Nils on the show, and she was in like the college cafeteria where she's teaching, and so she's sitting in the window, but it's 6 hours ahead in Germany, and so she's sitting there. You know, we did it in the afternoon, but the sun was setting, so. Now her light is disappearing. The sun's coming down. It's hitting her in the eyes, so she's wearing sunglasses. And then when the sun got low enough, she was able to take her sunglasses off again, and her face came back. But it went right through the sunset in our whole interview. It was really bizarre.
Oh, my God.
But so anyway.
Well, you know, I can actually do something really quickly. And of course, you know, this is my drums that were up in playing lately.
Nice. Yeah, give us the tour while we're at it.
Old DW 1980s Keller shells.
Wow.
And you know, and that's what I've been doing. But I'm gonna really quickly move to I'm sorry about this,
No, all
but
good, man.
I can actually create and now I can actually get a djembe
Nice.
and
See this, boys and girls?
yeah, there's always a solution.
Always.
Bumping into stuff that I have here. Now, I think that we
All right.
better.
There we go.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, because it's a little more.
Yeah. Now we got you. Beautiful.
And then this is the front of the drum set from
Oh, nice.
the other side.
What's the logo
the-
on the head?
This is the Rogers.
Oh, wow, there it is. So that was your father's Rogers kit.
Yeah, in 1961, and that's a lot of stories
Wow.
that I didn't know with my dad. So my dad, when he came from Cuba, Rogers had a timbales set up in the drum shop in Puerto Rico. And when my dad came in to try it out, it was really not that great. And he actually gave him a bunch of tips to reinforce the inside of the shells, have it tilted. There was no tilting timbales. And he said it'll be great for drummers and all that. And so they did it. They actually, but you know, my dad was just giving them tips, and it was no negotiation or anything. So they did it the way my dad suggested. So they gave him a brand new pair of timbales, and they gave him a drum set, and they made him a Rogers artist.
Oh, wow.
So he started this drum set in San Juan, Puerto Rico at the El San Juan Hotel. Is what all the artists came from United States, and all the drummers from all these artists, from Paul Anka, Bobby Vinton, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Paul Anka, you name it, one after the other, they all played this drum set.
Wow.
This was the drum set that was there. And then he went into fives with Alex Acuna, and my dad, Bobby Grauso, made them a set of fives. Then he switched to fives drums. He took the fives drums to Las Vegas. And then I got this drum set to play later on in high school and college.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's amazing, you know, you still have them because, you know, we talk about this all the time. Like, you have this connection to that first instrument, you know, sometimes. My first Ludwig Red Sparkle kit, you know, that was from the 70s that I had when I was a kid. I held on to it for a very long time. I did give it to a student eventually, so it has a good home.
I do that a lot, you know, as long as you keep it in the family. I've actually sold a couple of drum sets only to great best friends,
right,
that are drummers or students. And it's I actually have not kept everything because later on in my career, I actually sold some gear to buy electronics because I didn't have an electronics endorsement. So you have to buy it. And when you have a family and you have kids and all that, you can't spend thousands in some recording equipment, you know, so you basically start trying to sell. And I sold some things that I actually regret, some things that were like, but at the time it happens.
You do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? I think just real quick, why don't we say hello to a couple of people that are in the chat just to get them warmed up and moving. Let me pull it up real quick. Back from the beginning, Bob Sears from New Hampshire hanging with us, great student of mine. And Bob is, I just saw Bob on Saturday. He's playing in a cover band now at in his late 60s, starting to play in a cover band. Really exciting for him. My mom is here. My mom is hanging with us. So Dale Toscano, my mom. Joey Pinto from New York hanging with us, from Staten Island, New York. Chris Schneider, another great student of mine hanging with us. Actually, Joey Pinto has a question. He says, do either of you know Ray Cooper? He was the first guy I saw that made me begin to think beyond the drum kit. Ray Cooper.
Ray Cooper, the percussionist?
Yeah, I think he means the percussionist.
The percussionist that is with Elton John right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a amazing percussionist. He's been in so many records, and he's the guy that in London that plays the right part. And that's the thing with percussion that we like right now. Somebody actually recently, it was Kirsten's sister-in-law. He goes, "Oh my God, Wally, I'm at the Elton John concert, and Nigel Olsson and Ray Cooper." I'm going,
Wow.
what a combination. First of all, let me tell you something. As many drummers as they're all almost like all of them are my influences, the known and the unknown. A lot of people that you guys probably don't know, but they were like local and great drummers that I've learned from, and then all the ones indirectly and directly, from rock to jazz to Latin, you name it. Recording drummers, band drummers. There's a difference, because when you have a recording drummer like Jeff Porcaro,
Right.
that can cut any session, or Steve Gadd, well, he can be in a band, which happens to be Toto. But a lot of band drummers only have done that band.
Right.
So they might not be the guys that do sessions and all kinds of different things for other people. They might not even want to, but their sound is part of that band. I mean, Nigel Olsson was my favorite, and probably still is my favorite ballad rock drummer. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody to play rock ballads with the sensitivity and the musicality. You go and check out all those old Elton John records. He was not really playing super loud, but you can hear all the little crescendos even.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
playing almost classical. He's amazing. And Ray Cooper knows how to fill in the meat and potato, from the
Right.
drummer. The little colors and the partially and it needs a little this and a little butter on top of the steak, that kind of thing. He knows how to decorate a drummer's groove.
Yeah. What you're saying about Nigel is pretty interesting, because I feel like Nigel's playing is super musical, and I don't know, this is kind of a visual thing, but like I describe it as being really wide, like the way he plays. It just feels wide. Like there's a lot of space, but the way he uses it is super clever and musical and thoughtful, right, to the music. And like you said, he really is part of that sound.
Yeah,
I think you could plug in. There's great drummers that have also played with Elton John, but it's like you can plug those guys in. But I feel like he was one of those ingredients that it's irreplaceable in a way,
Yeah, well, that's a good the way you said that, because I remember when Tris started playing back with Kenny Loggins. Kenny Loggins told him, "Are you kidding me? You're part of my musical DNA." And so, like, that's true. I mean, you become part of that thing. I play with so many different people. That was first of all, that was my goal, actually, to be a session player. I wanted to be in a band, but I wanted to play the variety. And sometimes for that, there's a price to pay. It's like work, don't work, work, don't work, work, don't work.
Yeah.
When you have a tour with a band, you can see, oh my God, it's like a whole year or a never ending, like we used to call Santana tours and Steve Winwood and Chicago. And wow, you guys are touring? He goes, we never stop.
Yeah.
It's
when
like,
aren't we touring?
Yeah, the tour of forever. And so, but with that being said, I always try to like keep variety between tours,
right?
So I can play different styles and all that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was thinking from what you said is that sometimes us drummers, including me, I like, for example, in this room, there's nothing. There's air and quiet and silence.
Yeah.
And whatever we play is it. And so basically we have 100% of the space and all the drumming we want. The minute, sometimes we get used to doing that. And what happens is, like, enter a piano player with fat chords and enter a singer with melodies and lyrics and enter a bass player. And all of a sudden the air shrinks because you have to share. And that's one thing that I've noticed some of my students, they're practicing by themselves.
Yeah.
And you have all that air. And sometimes there's an art form to knowing how to get around four-way coordination and get better at your drum set. But there's another art form to be in the music business with your drumming. So that's why I always say I play drums to create music. I don't use music to create drumming. So basically, you can do that for the purpose of showing a drum thing and all that, but you never sacrifice the music to show off yourself.
Right.
Hog the spotlight or feed the ego, because eventually, the voice goes around like, oh my God, you can do 90%, 95% amazing job, and that 5% you overplay, and they go, man, next time call somebody else, he's a little too busy. And they will classify you like immediately like that.
Always play for the music.
That's something that I'm very aware when I go into with this artist. I study the record and how they're doing it live. Might be a different tempo. And of course, my credo, as you know by now, is like tempos, grooves, and styles. And then all the rest comes after, really.
Right.
Solos, great. But I never gotten an audition based on a solo. I never gotten a gig based on, hey, do a drum solo and send it. It's like, can you, in fact, somebody one time, I think it was Michael Bolton, which I never got to play on the gig, but he actually sent me something, goes, man, I heard of you. Can I send you some drumless tracks and you can play, then send them to me to see how you interpret my songs. At that time, I didn't have a studio, so I had to like go into a studio and set up a drum set and all that, and it was too much, and I didn't do it, so I didn't do the gig. But it was very interesting how he put it. I don't care if you can do a drum solo or not, you have chops and all that, but I'm gonna send you my songs without the drum set. You play them and see how you play my songs. Yeah. And basically that's it with every band.
It comes down to serving the music. So like you said, you never got the gig because of a drum solo. And how many guys have said that, right? Like throughout your lifetime, you hear that all the time. And it really comes down to serving the music, playing for the song. That's why, even if you're doing a remote session, if I'm doing a songwriter, I want to get the lyrics. I want to understand what they're saying and play for what's there, the emotion of it. You have to play that role, right? You have to play the role. So
that's very good, because I do that. In fact, right now I'm recording something in Italian. I don't even understand. And I asked, like, what does it mean? Because I need to know the emotion behind it.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. That doesn't mean that drum solos are bad. In fact, when I was with Santana, it was 3 drum solos, not 1, with the bass player, with the percussionist, and Soul Sacrifice, me by myself.
Yeah.
But he never auditioned me on that. I mean, if you can do those 3 drum solos and not play the grooves and groove the band, you're not the guy.
Right.
You cannot be called just for a drum solo and we got another drummer now to play the grooves.
Yeah. It's like songs first, drum solo after.
Right.
By the way, John Wooten hanging with us, saying, "Wally, good to see you." Very cool to have John in here. Also, my good friend Anthony Crisina with us. He said, "Good evening, gentlemen. Walfredo, what kinds of things are you focused on these days in your own practicing to improve your playing?"
Well, I always practicing chops and keeping up the technique. It's almost like a competition with yourself.
Right.
You know what you have done, so you have to try to keep it up. Yeah. And that itself is difficult. Then there's the learning new things. Now with John, he's John Wooten. I mean, he's such an incredible drummer, groover, musical drummer. He plays with steel drum bands. But then he's a rudimental guru, so like anything by John Wooten kicks my ass,
Indeed.
And gets me in the woodshed. Now I sometimes practice, I'll like here, that corner right there. It's really, my studio's a mess. I just came home from the road. So that's my practicing pad corner.
Nice.
So sometimes I don't go to the drum set. I go to the practicing pad because it's all about the chops and the technique that I need to develop to feel good. You know, you do need technique. You do need chops to execute and go, like John Coltrane said, when I think of something and it goes through me directly out with no interference or obstacles, that's what he wants. And that's
Right.
what we want too. You know, not to think of something and their hands go, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so like lately, what I've been concentrating, aside from working with Chicago, and we just released a new album that I actually did here, most of it
Right.
during the pandemic, and sending files. I had to get my sending file chops up. And so then I'm trying to create a trio here in Cincinnati area with these two great musicians that live close to me, and they're like old souls and trio music that of songs that people know.
Yeah.
From starting from the Beatles, Steely Dan, just things that people know, but as a trio, jazz, Latin, funk.
Nice.
And then I always work on getting better at Logic Audio so I can record my drums and make the drum sound better.
Yeah.
I don't have to like send them to a lot of different people or rely on other people to create my drum sound.
Right.
And that takes time. And the pandemic, we were talking about it, threw me into that reinventing, because before I would just go here, play drums, send a file. But now people are really, they just want like the ultimate drum sound from you, not from the engineer.
Yeah.
So that's a new world right now we're living.
It's really changed. The music business has changed so much with that in mind, right? Where now we have to be musicians, engineers, recording artists, all at the same time, be able to put it all together, have it sounding pretty much close to what it's going to be mixed, and then send that off, send the stems, send them not only the stems, but a stereo mix that sounds like a complete drum sound. You know,
Exactly.
It's really wearing so many different hats now. And then you play percussionist, you play percussion and drums at a very high level. So you have to keep all of that up to par, right? So you're practicing percussion, practicing drum set, practicing recording Logic. It's a lot.
I'll tell you, percussion and drums, drum set alone is such a chore just to basically keep up with yourself, you know, keep
Right.
up your, you know, the motor going. And then the other day I had to do something on congas, and I haven't played in a very, very long time. So I went, thank God it was a 4-minute song. I went like this, and I started, boom, bah, doom, bah, and I went, ouch,
Ouch.
ouch. And I had no callus for congas, but I have for drum set.
Right.
So there's, you know, not big callus, but, you know, it's just like where the reinforcement is. Right now on the drum set, you get it here and you get it here.
Over here, yeah.
You know, right? Like, so that's where your sticks are. And then you get congas, which is here, and the slap here.
Right.
And man, I'm telling you, sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult. It's challenging, and you gotta really love it, because the ultimate is the love that you can create music with your instruments, and then to send the file and then have the artist on the other side, whether it's Moscow, Italy, New York, wherever, go like, man, everything worked fine. Send me an email. Did it locked in? Does it go, oh my God, it's great. So that's exactly what we did with the Chicago, with the pandemic. Everybody was all over the place. And it was really, at the beginning, I had a lot of help. I sent the files to somebody else to make them sound better, so I can
Right.
send them to the producer for the new album. But basically, you have a central, which is the producer that did the Chicago record with his engineer, and all the files were coming from everywhere.
Right.
And you put them all in there, and that's born for this moment, the new CD of Chicago.
Isn't it amazing? Like it sounds to me like the two things that would never be in a sentence together is Chicago and remote sessions, right?
I know.
Like Chicago typically would be all in a room together, or the rhythm section perhaps, but maybe everybody in the room recording together, right? With that
So
kind of
we
music.
only did, with that being said, we only did, I think, well, one song at the very end when the pandemic, we opened back up and it was 2021. And this is the way we recorded the Chicago Christmas record that we did the last year, the latest Chicago Christmas. We did it, Chicago, by the way, we don't sound check. We basically arrive at 6:30, something like that, do a meet and greet, get ready, do the show, get on the bus and go to the next place.
Right.
And we have more time. So we got together, like the sound check, the instruments were set up, and we recorded as a rhythm section right there on the showroom before the people went there. Our monitor guy became the engineer, and we recorded If This Isn't Love, one of the next to the last in the record. That was a full rhythm section live on the stage.
Oh my God.
And then when that finished, they had sent me another track that was like a demo. And the engineer said, like, you want to do another one? And it goes, yeah, let's play this track. I listened to it. It was a demo. It was very raw. Then I played this groove, and that's the last track on the CD.
Oh my God.
A House on the Hill. And it's a pretty cool groove. And then they added acoustic guitar and flute. And I went, oh man, it sounds really great. I wish I would have been playing to that, but that was not the case.
Well, you get it wherever you can, right? That's pretty amazing.
Well, that's why it's very important. We were talking about it earlier. It's very important. People ask me the whole click versus click and no click and metronome. And I play by feel. Look, let me tell you something. There's a groove and a tempo to everything.
Right.
Today, you got to not only do all of that, you got to be able to groove to a click, groove without a click, groove to a loop, groove to a cowbell, groove to a shaker, groove to anything that you can grab. Even sometimes people send me this without a click.
Right.
I'm going, well, is that on a tempo? Oh yeah, the BPM is okay. And so then I put the click, but you got to grab, make music out of whatever, and tempo, groove, and style.
Yeah.
So now what am I going to play? A funky tune to that, or a Latin tune to that, or a jazzy or hip hop shuffle? So those are styles,
Indeed. I like also what you said is you have to be able to make music on anything. And so I did a session. We had this record just come out Friday last week. And on the session, Larry Campbell, the producer, had me playing on a leather chair that was mic'd with like a UA40, like a massive $8,000 microphone on a chair, a leather chair. And I was playing, basically the top of the chair had like a high pitch and the seat had a low pitch. And we didn't have a cajon there, so we used the chair for the cajon. And so basically playing like boom, 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 boom. And it's on the track and it sounds amazing. But
well, I tell you, I don't know if you got it from Lindsey, but when I was with Lindsey Buckingham from 2007 to 11, the leather couches that have, like what you said, that low, he loves that. So he actually does exactly that. He brings that Neumann microphone,
right,
and
how crazy, right?
And I said, Lindsey, this is amazing. I mean, it's like great sound. Then you can play drums on top. And he goes, what was Secondhand News? He goes, the song Secondhand News, like with the Fleetwood Mac song, that has the couch in it.
Oh,
and I went, no way. The Mick goes like with the brushes.
Yeah.
I know.
I always wondered what that was.
Man, I said like, wow, you got to be kidding me. So we used the couch and that's it, man. Anything that works and any sound is.
Now you're building a road case for a couch, like to bring it out on the road. That's what I said to Larry. I was like, oh, great. Now I have to get a road case built for this chair so I can bring it out on the road. Oh my God.
So yeah, so that's really cool. And today I saw a documentary on oh my God, it was Timbaland, the producer Timbaland, and how he creates those hip hop because some of those beats, once you get them, it's like they get,
Right.
and it's not really a drum set necessarily. You can put a snare drum in there or put a kick, but it might be like you're saying, it might be a box and a low box with a kick and a snare and a clap together. So today, mixing sounds is an art form too, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like for example, Robert Lamb is challenging sometimes. We got like 3 leaders in Chicago, and Robert is always like, Wally, when I was doing the Now album, Chicago 36, Wally, I need you on percussion, but can you give me some sounds that I've never heard? And I went like, what do you mean? Like you never heard? Well, you know, I've heard timbales, congas, pandero, triangle, timpani, all of that. Anything that is in the Roland thing is a legitimate sound. Berimbau, but can you give me something that I've never even heard about? So I go, okay. So I started sampling like crazy. So every time we would go into an arena, and especially the hockey arenas with the bathrooms, those bathrooms are chambers of echo. And so I would get like a trash can, you know, like the guys that play in a Blue Man Group and all that, and basically go, and I was going, oh my God, this is the most amazing sound. And I sampled so many things. And that's the thing, you know, even at the dinner table, if the wine glass sounds good, it goes, honey, wait a second, get my phone. Sample, and the waiter goes, was that red wine or white wine? I don't know, but it sounded great. You know?
Oh my God. Yeah. I remember doing that with my mom's wine glasses and champagne glasses, and putting different amounts of water in them, and then taking chopsticks, because chopsticks wouldn't break the glasses because they were light enough, taking chopsticks and playing, you know, pitches on them. Oh my God.
I'm stealing that one right there.
Yeah, it's good.
Honey, get the wine glasses ready.
By the way, just back to John Wooten, he said, wow, a shout out. Let's do some more arrangements.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So John, one of the first recordings that I did was for Pearl Drums when I was with Pearl, and they recorded this album called No Borders, and I did a piece called Wally's World with John Pena and David Goldblatt, and it was a trio, and it was a long arrangement, but it went all over the place. It was crazy, and John took it and arranged it for percussion ensemble, and I flew to Jackson, Mississippi to actually go to the college, and we did it, and it was amazing. And then another time I couldn't come because I was touring probably, and he had Bill Summer and some other artists, and it's on YouTube, Wally's World, John Wooten with the percussion ensemble. It's really challenging. He did an amazing job.
Oh, I got to check that. That's so cool. By the way, Anthony Cucina said, great story about the chair and the couch. Gary Chester recorded Stand By Me with the bottom of an ashtray filled with sand.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah, you know, Airto was my hero when he came out, not only Brazilian percussion.
Yeah. Because
Airto took it somewhere else. So when the album came out in the 70s, I had just moved from Puerto Rico, and Miles Davis at the Fillmore live. And I saw this guy that had literally a junkyard on stage. Nice. He had like the first Engelhardt. He had a guy, you know, looked like the guy from Wizard of Oz, you know, the metal cone.
Right.
And the cone hat.
Oh, like the Tin Man thing.
Yeah, Tin Man, but it was all playable. It was all Engelhardt percussion, and he created every finger was a tonality, and he basically played this statue of metal, and then had like different things, and had Chinese baby hammers and this and that. So I started really early on in the 70s going to 2 places, to junkyards and to toy stores.
Wow.
And baby toys and everything from squeezing toys. And so that all becomes, you know, sounds. And today, of course, I have a lot of that sampled, because the bigger like you said, the business has changed. Some people don't want to pay cartage. They don't want to pay a huge truck. So you got to have it all here. And so I don't have the big gongs anymore. I have them sample and timpanis and a lot of that stuff. But, you know, the little percussion, I got a big collection.
Yeah.
And my daughter, which is a percussionist with George Benson and sings with George Benson, when the last time she saw all this percussion, she goes, "Dad, you better put this on your will that it goes to me."
That's great.
I mean, you can give the drum sets to Joseph and Gabriel. I don't know what he wants, but the percussion goes to
nice. That's amazing. You know, by the way, I was going to mention that at some point, but you know, we may as well mention it now. So generationally, you know, from your John Wooten put up the link to the YouTube thing. Now I have
fantastic.
It. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he put it in the chat. That's awesome. So everybody click on that link later after our show. Your grandfather to your father to you and your brothers,
Danny.
And Danny's
Amar's an actor, but he plays some percussion too.
Yeah. And it's, you know, even, you know, another creative type, right? Your father created this force to be reckoned with. And now you with your children passing that stuff down. I know Joseph is doing like writing and playing drums, right? And isn't he arranging his own music and stuff?
Yeah, he sings. He moved to Portland right now, but yeah, he's such a great artist. He's like photographer, painter, lyricist, singer, drummer, plays piano, everything. There's another cousin of mine lives in Ottawa right now, Rafael de los Reyes, New York. He knows how to play like all the style. So, you know, it just runs in the family, whether it's art or whatever. And the girls are talented too. My sisters, it's just that they decided to go, you know, other careers.
There's 6 of you, right? 6 kids?
Yeah. So like, you know, we all like, it's like arts we all blame our dad. You know,
that's right.
Because he's the one that always, he just cracks the whip. Well, what have you been creating? What are you been into? Have you written anything? What are you practicing? And he keeps up with everybody on YouTube. He sends me videos on tech. Have you heard this kid? Hey, I love this girl, Sarah, you know, like, you know, and like, and he knows like the latest of every country here, Brazil, India, China, Cuba, Puerto Rico. I mean, he sends me, I don't know, he spends, you know, he's retired, so he cannot play and move a lot. So like, he just searches.
Yeah.
And so, but his passion is called passion.
Right.
My dad loves the shape of a drum more than anybody I know. He just loves the drum, the shape of a drum. And he doesn't, even if the drum set doesn't play or whatever, he just loves it. He'll buy it. You know, he just loves drums, you know.
Didn't he just gave you a snare drum that's new in the box, right?
Yeah. I mean, DW 13-inch. I don't have a 13-inch because I always had a thing with the side stick, you know, little snares. I mean, I like to strike them, and especially the piccolos. But 13-inch, I thought it was going to mess with my.
God bless.
Thank you. But this 13-inch is like stainless steel, so it was so sensitive. Played like rolls, everything. So once I tried, you know, with drummers, a drum is yours once you play it, and whatever you do with your hands, including that includes skin drums, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go at somewhere, and if I play the drum and I click, that's mine. Another percussionist might not like it, but you know, it has to do. And it's funny because it's still an object and it's not alive, but whatever that is, cow skin, goat skin, plastic skin, thin skin, whatever that drum is, and your humanness and your art, if it clicks, including wine glasses,
right?
You know, then that's your sound. Then it's yours for your vocabulary.
Right. Yeah. That artist that I mentioned before, a couple of years ago on that same with the same producer. Larry Campbell was producing. He was the guitarist and musical director for Lee Van Helm and Bob Dylan. So
Oh,
he's
I
been
love it.
around a long time. Great, Americana artist. But he had me playing a bottle of rocks, like a water jug filled with rocks on this one track. And it's just amazing that thing I actually do keep in a road case and bring it. But it's amazing what will add something to the music. And it's that passion, that love, that's why we do it, right? So,
Absolutely.
and I never sample that because it just looks so wacky on stage. So it's fun to like pull up the bottle of rocks and play it into a condenser mic.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention John Gill's hanging with us from Oneonta, New York.
Oh,
John
thank
Gill's
you.
a great educator and drummer. John, if you have any questions, he's a New York, Long Island guy that moved up to Oneonta, so we don't hold it against him. And somebody else said hello before. Oh, Danny O'Keefe said hello and said, "What was the most challenging gig for you?" Just in general, I guess.
Uh, okay, as far as artists,
Yeah, he wasn't real specific, so maybe just mention one
well,
gig that you can
it comes
think
to
of.
mind too. Like some of the most difficult music I ever played was contemporary classical music, and when I was at UNLV.
Yeah,
So because I was like a little advanced and always trying to be advanced. By the time I was senior in high school, I was already working professionally. But then I started playing with the chamber orchestra at UNLV
yeah,
before I even joined UNLV. So I was already third percussionist and all that. And they had some of these charts were like crazy, like it was like duct tape on a gong and on the downbeat, 5/8, 5/8, 3/8, 4/4, 5/8, 3/8, 5. And on the downbeat of the 7/8 bar, you're supposed to like scrape and that kind of stuff. It was just like really weird,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so like it was very, very difficult. And after that, it was almost like Frank Zappa, Black Page kind of stuff. And after that, anything else was easy.
Right.
And so, but the most challenging thing happened, I think, and it was a learning experience when Lindsey Buckingham, as an artist, he doesn't think, drum says, he just wants like his songs. He's a songwriter and he has almost like an image in his head, sound wise. And so like, we were rehearsing the formats at his house and I had a drum set. And then at the beginning it was half drum set and half percussion. So I was sitting on a cajon because some of the tunes were on a cajon with a shaker and then playing with my hands, some of the sizzle cymbals and all that. And then we went to drum set. But then he said, when we started the rehearsals for the tour, he goes, "Wally, you're not going to play drum set all night long, are you?" And I go like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes like, "Well, like we have like lots of guitars per tune, and then the keyboard player has different patches, this string for this song and this one, a little more synthesizer for that song, and different sounds, the fretless bass. So, like with Fleetwood Mac, Mick plays the drum set, and I want something different. So I want like almost like a drum set per song, a different drum set per song." And I went, "Okay, so that's like you mean like 13 drum sets?" He goes, "Yeah." And so I said, "Well, how are we going to do that?" So at that time, I had no time to learn and put triggers on the drum set. And even if it was triggers, what are you going to trigger?
Right.
So I had to actually really quickly get the TD30 at that time, the Roland TD30. And right now, I think it's TD50, the latest one. But basically, I went with Lindsey on the brain and we picked a bass drum, tom-toms, and snare drums per song that he liked.
Wow.
So basically, for say like Go Your Own Way, it was more like Mick Fleetwood's drum set. Yeah. So we picked like, and then for other songs, it was more like, so the key is in the front, the sound guy, every drum set, the levels go like this.
Yeah.
So he had to mix it and put it to where it sounds great and keep it there in memory lock. And then I use an array of different live cymbals. But as far as it was like the TD-30, and every song was a different drum set with percussion and samples. So sometimes you have to be ready. And then, he came to me after. Lindsay is a kind of artist that a lot of people criticize him for being like temperamental and temperamental and all that. He is an artist, and every artist is different. And so once you give him what he wants and he's really happy, then, you're it. I mean, so basically he came to me and goes, man, I apologize. I know you're a drummer and I know you love playing drums and all that. But, from where I came from, I told him, Lindsay, let me tell you something. I'm a rhythmicist, a groove and sound collector. Drum set is one more of my arsenal instruments. Right. So if you tell me right now that the whole show I'm going to be playing a Coke bottle and a hanger, that's it.
Right.
That's it. I mean, whatever it takes for the song.
Right.
I play the rhythms and I use my drum set and my percussion instrument to create music. And once you groove the artist, you're doing your job. It doesn't matter with what cymbal, with whatever. For example, Joe Sample was very picky with right cymbals. So when I started rehearsing with him for his trio in 1998, 99, he called me before the rehearsal and he goes, hey man, can you bring extra right cymbals? I go like, okay. So I got all my right cymbals, for a trio and then, we played a song. He goes, I don't know, try that one or try the other one. And then we settle. And then I settle. In fact, I don't have them here, but, there's some cymbals that he loved more than others.
Right.
And every artist is so different, but Lindsay was challenging.
Right.
And so after you do, that's why preparing yourself, that's why in colleges, and drum teachers, they're so tough. My teachers, even in elementary school, and all my toughest teachers, starting with my dad, I thank them because, you're prepared for the worst case scenario and the most difficult jobs. Once I arrived in LA and I did movie soundtracks and television commercials, really? And by the way, with that being said, about as far as reading and stuff like that, none of the biggest major acts in my resume had a chart. No, Chicago, Santana, right. Steve Winwood, Tanya Maria, you mentioned.
Yep.
So that's very important that even when you learn reading music, to memorize quickly, action, reaction, memorize, get it, play it. That's I think sometimes even as important as reading, because I know I've seen a lot of people that are reading and they kind of like concentration is there, but like Steve Gadd said once, there's life past the symbols.
Yes.
Believe it or not. So, you're in your real estate and you get into the chart, into your drum parts, your rudiments, this and that. It goes like, what's going on there? Because I'm playing with you guys. So, sometimes with Chicago, that a story, I did have little cheat sheets when I started with Chicago and percussion. And I wanted to make sure I pay tribute to the percussionists that were there before me, which was my brother Danny and Drew Hester,
right, with
Tristan Bowden on drums. So I want to make sure that even though I have seen and knew Lauju de Oliveira and what he had done with Chicago, some things have changed.
Yeah.
So and then Walter Parazada before the show, I said, is everything cool? Anything I should be doing that you guys want me to do? And he took me to the side, goes, yes, I want you to go out there and have a ball. Just have fun, man. Just don't worry about anything. Just have fun. And so I kind of went, you know what? I'm not going to be using, so my eyes are not going to be watching my instruments. Are going to be watching everybody.
Yeah.
Eye contact. And when Robert Lamb plays the piano and turns to the right, I'm there. And when the guitar player turns around like this, I'm playing
Yeah.
with you, buddy. So basically that physicalness and signaling that we're playing music together, that it's not just like, yeah, I'm playing my part. That's very important, and it gives it a feeling that, if you're grooving, I'm there to groove the people, not to groove myself, even though I think, oh my God, this feels so good, but is he feeling good?
Exactly.
And that's why I always said, when I auditioned with Santana, and they sent me 5 songs to learn, he didn't do anything. So I went over there and he started just playing, looking at me, and I said, man, I don't recognize this at all. But 2 bars went by and I went, the hell with it. He was like, ching, 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 ching. You go and dive and play music, and so there's that, so that's why it's really good to prepare yourself for different situations.
Indeed.
Sometimes, like now I'm with Chicago, and it becomes like repeating the show over here and traveling over there. But personally, I always challenge myself. So I just don't do that just because I'm doing that with Chicago. Never rest on your laurels. So basically I'm here and I should be off, but off doesn't mean the worst thing for me personally. I suffer the most if I have to go on a vacation and not play music or practice drums, and I'm vegetating on a beach, eating a lot. I mean, that is like, there's going to be so much work for me afterwards to get back in shape. So why would I want to go to a place and pay to get out of shape?
That's true. That's why we have That's why we have this stuff. Put it in the suitcase. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
and that's a challenge, right? When you're with your wife and I'm going, what do you want to do today? Well, I need at least an hour to practice, but she knows that already.
Right.
She knows my necessities, the bare necessities.
Meanwhile, we're tapping polyrhythms while we're, laying somewhere on a beach. You're practicing in here anyway,
Oh, for sure.
Oh man. Who's that? Oh, so John Wooten said he's got to run. Thanks for the great interviews, Jim. He said, Wally, hope to see you. Make some music soon. See y'all at PASIC. Yes, I'll see you at PASIC. I'm doing a clinic, technology and drums at PASIC this year. So I'll see you in room 105 on Friday at noon, I think is my time.
Man, you know what? I hate to say it, but I live so close now to Indianapolis, but I'm going to Puerto Rico to see my mom because, especially after this hurricane.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That happened. So she survived it, but there's a lot of no power still and no water and
oh my God.
certain damage that happened. So I'm going from the 8th to the 15th to Puerto Rico. So I'm gonna miss this PASIC.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that.
Listen, family first, right? We have to take care of family.
I mean, I love PASIC, and now I can just drive there. So
yeah. Oh, that's
that would have
amazing.
been great.
By the way, John said, sorry, I can't make the Jackson, Mississippi show in October. Cheers. So he's heading out.
There'll be another one.
Yeah, there'll be another one. Don't worry. By the way, I just wanted to, we should just give a shout out to Dom, our good buddy, Dom Famularo, who's doing amazing. If we always said, if anybody can kick cancer's butt, it's Dom, and he's doing it. He's got a long road ahead, but he's doing great. And we know that at the moment he's cancer free, which is such a blessing. So
that's huge.
Huge. I mean, as Dom would say, that's huge. I see some wine in our future, right? So unbelievable. So a big shout out and big hugs and love to Dom. And by the way, your video that you sent me for Dom's birthday video is great.
And I'm sorry, I had so much technical difficulties. I don't know why it was not sending. But yeah, and thank you for doing that, because all those little things are helpful and share the spirit.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the best medicines, right? It's like this community, especially, just all the outpouring of positive energy and love. That's medicine right there, for sure.
Yes, And
Yeah, yeah.
Dom is the king of that. I have so many stories with Dom. So many places we've been together, Greece, and oh my God, like so many international and national. But I remember one time that I had a student that had lost a leg, and actually it was not my student. It was the wife called me. Can you come and teach my husband and give him a drum lesson? He goes, well, can he come here? He goes, no, he doesn't know that you're coming, that I'm paying for you to give him a lesson. But the thing is, like, he lost his left leg completely from different cancers that came in. So I went, okay. And I was so nervous because that was another challenge. So I called Dom Formularo. And Dom was almost like, it was just funny. It was like, it was serious, but it was funny.
I can
And
hear him in my head already.
oh my God. It was like, Wally, you're the perfect person. This guy is blessed because it happens to be you that play all the percussion on the left. So you're going to close up that hi-hat, and you're going to make him so busy with the left hand playing percussion while you play the right hand on the snare like this with the kick and all that. He will forget that he needs a left leg. In fact, you know what? Who needs a left leg? I don't even need a, and Don went on and went on. And after the conversation, I went like, man, I'm ready to teach this.
He's the
So
best,
thank
man.
you, Dom.
He would always start those conversations with put your big boy pants on and get out there and just do it,
That's right.
And I could hear him going like, who needs a freaking left leg, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. Like, I mean, he is amazing. So now I actually, 2 Mondays from now, I'm going to, the similar experience, some kid that got into a really, really, actually, I don't even know what to call it. It was not an accident, but it was like somebody, a violent attack.
Oh, no.
He was attacked violently, and he's lucky to be alive, but his right side of the body, he lost. He can't move it and all that. So I'm going to go over there and see where he's at, and
Wow.
trying to, just that's it. If whatever you got, there's so many videos out there that are inspirational of people that are doing more than me with less limbs.
Right. Oh my God. That's true.
Right. So
that's such a good point, because and sometimes I'll show my students videos of that kind of stuff when they're not really working hard, and I'll go, look at this guy. He doesn't have any arms and he's playing the guitar with his feet. It's like,
I know. Yeah. So,
like, no
I got a
excuse.
hashtag, a little hashtag that I created because I started mentioning so much. And I even told to my own kids, is like, some people have the passion and they want to do, but they want to do things and they want to achieve things, but they got like their limits are different. So I got a hashtag called "You Gotta Wanna." I mean, so if you don't want enough, then it's not gonna be there. But sometimes, it's just like the cliche. If you fall, scrape the blood, and then keep on going. And you start reading and getting it. So I read one time in Forbes magazine that I think more than half of the millionaires have failed and have gotten the bankruptcies for like 1 or 2 times, and then, but they actually hit the ground to go up. But a straight line, there's no success and there's no failure either.
Right.
So basically, it's like a safety net. And life finishes, and I wish I would have done that, but I didn't. I wish I would have done that. So basically, the thing is, you gotta wanna enough to. So the question is, how much you wanna?
Yeah. You got to be willing to take risks, right? You got to wanna, just like you said,
yeah.
but at a certain amount of risk. If you can't take the risk, then you're going to be in that straight plane.
Exactly.
And even if you fail, you're taking risks, you're gonna rebound for sure.
Yeah. And I even setting up a drum set, a lot of people say, well, that's not the way you do it. It goes, well, we're talking art here.
Right.
My dad was actually always like into I remember when Alex joined Weather Report, like Alex came to the house one time and my dad had all the cymbals upside down. And he goes, what's going on here? He goes, well, like a lot of the cymbals, I don't like when they actually go like this. So here you can still play the bell on the inner side of the cymbal, but you can still play the cymbal upside down. I was going, you're crazy, and so like, those are like things that are like inventions. Like, why not try this?
Right.
Why, it's good to actually know traditional. Like Jeff Porcaro used to say, kind of like the hashtag. It was kind of like it's two ways of playing, traditional and kind of like so this one in particular is kind of like a samba that I do, Jeff Porcaro, kind of like a samba, or kind of like a funky New Orleans beat, but it's not traditional. But it's good to actually learn the traditional,
right?
And then you can break it. Like, for example, a traditional Italian cuisine dish, then you can do whatever you want, and specialize it on your own. So music is kind of like that sometimes,
Yeah. Oh, that's
kind of like a.
I love that. I kind of like it. That's so great. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what a lot of what you've done in your own, like, we'll call it groove construction, is drawing from all those influences and then creating something new. But you studied everything. You studied your rhythms from Brazil, Afro-Cuban rhythms to a deep extent, Indian rhythms. I know you studied, even Chinese music, right? So going into all these different folkloric music and learning the traditions so that you could create something new from you.
Right.
You can't go forward unless you go back, I think, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's actually the more back you go and the more you dig to the root, like the more fruit you get, because like they say, like in American music, blues is the root and jazz and R&B are the fruit, so like
Right.
you got to like go down first, and you can do different rhythms that are very traditional rhythms, and then put them into electronic sounds or change them a little bit and they sound completely different in another. For example, like right now I'm going to cook dinner, so I got an avocado out, but
Nice.
avocado you can put in Mexican food, you can create a salad with it, you can put avocado with Cuban food, can put avocado on a pizza, I mean, that's sacrilegious, but more like a mixture of after you've done your little mixture of pizza and all that. Don't tell that to Tommy Igo with pineapple, because he'll flip, because he said pizza should not have pineapple. But I've eaten pizzas that are like avant-garde a little bit, and that's what it is. You actually start mixing different things, and that's why music is so beautiful, that
Yeah.
you can actually create. I mean, even when you see a band like Led Zeppelin, I remember reading the liner notes of the CD collection that I bought one time in the 90s, and it said, like, man, Jimmy Page was into the blues, American blues players, and then Robert Lamb got into this Arabic, Moroccan. He used to go to Morocco, and like all the chanting and vocal of Arabic music, and then John Paul Jones was a great bass player, but he was into classical music. And John Bonham was so much into like Al Jackson, Motown's, James Brown drummers, and he loved that. And I know for a fact, because Jim Capaldi with Traffic had many stories. They're all from Birmingham. So like, it's just really interesting. And I said, wow. So they all brought all of those influence to Led Zeppelin, and it became Led Zeppelin.
Right.
And Jim Capaldi told me actually the same thing with Traffic. The first time Traffic was a band that even Jimi Hendrix loved. And it was like mixing African percussion with Celtic music and R&B and blues and classical music. So basically Chris Wood, Steve Winwood, Jim Capaldi, and Reebok Baku, on percussion. And Jim, the first time I talked to him on the phone, I go, man, Jim, Traffic was, it's an incredible band. I mean, you guys were like the original 10-minute jam band. And he goes, well, we're a frustrated Latin band, and we just wrote a verse and a chorus as an excuse to jam.
Oh, that's great.
Like Low Spark of High Heel Boys. And I go, like, so you mean like you wanted to jam for a long time, so we have to come up with a verse and a chorus, and then jam for 10 minutes.
That's right. Although, yeah.
So,
Oh, that's amazing. It's like, so to package this thing, let's put a verse and a chorus, and then we can put that on a record. Oh man.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, man, I have to say I have a few, I call these speed round questions. Like, cause I feel like I could talk to you all night. Really?
I love talking drums too. So we shall do this again.
Indeed, indeed. And by the way, for anybody that hasn't really looked into the discography of Walfredo, it's really amazing. I mean, it's really extensive. So check out, just go through it, and you're gonna know a lot of music. And then there's some stuff like that I saw you played with Tanya Maria. I didn't realize that. I studied with Kim Plainfield in New York here,
yeah.
and of course Kim had played with Tanya, and I saw him many times in the city. So I always get very excited about. I love Tanya's music. So
yeah, Tanya was an intense year. In 1984, we recorded a live album, and she was, for example, I mean, we can go on and on and on. But for example, I was just telling somebody the other day, like, because, there's like this little great app. It's called percussiontutor.com. Percussion tutor for the iPhone.
Okay.
You can have all these traditional rhythms, right? Like from Africa to Cuba, Brazil, Santo Domingo, Spain, Peru. And so like there's a Brazilian rhythm called Partido Alto.
I was going to bring that up because that's the first time I really heard it, except for there's a track, Partido Alto,
So
right?
He named a song named Partido Alto.
He named it, yeah.
From the rhythm.
Yeah.
So basically it's like ba boom boom ba chum boom ba boom 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 ba chum boom.
Yeah.
So basically that's Tanya's groove. So basically when I first started playing with Tanya, I learned the tunes. John Pena was the bass player, was going to be Ron Powell in percussion. And we were playing in Seattle, and she was opening for Freddie Hubbard. And when I arrived, I mean, I knew the tunes, but I met her like right before the concert. There was no sound check because it was a festival. So we couldn't sound check. No band could sound check. It's basically go on stage and play. But I was the new drummer. I never played with her. I sat on the drum set, and then like she goes, and I'm sitting on the drum set looking like, really? Like, I mean, there's no count off.
Yeah.
She didn't count the tunes. In fact, she probably didn't even know how to count because she probably couldn't. It was just based on that rhythm. So once you learn that rhythm, you know that even when she goes boom 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 boom, that's boom 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 boom. So once you learn, oh my God, she's based on Partido Alto, then you come in on the second beat because like boom 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 boom, you're in. And so it was very difficult and challenging, and a lot of mistakes I did. Once I'm in the tune, I know where to go and how to navigate. But Tanya was a wild and fun experience. We went all over the world, and in 1984.
Wow.
And I learned. I was into Brazilian music. I had played with Sergio Mendes and a lot of Brazilian artists in LA, and so that's why John Pena said, "Man, you're the perfect guy with Tanya because she's not just Brilliant. It's about funk and R&B. But you cannot just be funk and R&B without knowing the Brazilian rhythms. So that's the thing. So this is a little story. And because I admire this guy so much, to let you know that you don't have to necessarily be Latin or Brazilian or Cuban. If you're really, really, really gotta wanna, the hashtag. That's right. You gotta wanna. So at that time, we were all in LA making a living, playing, you call them casuals or whatever, corporates, whatever.
Yep.
You make a living. You got a gig here one day, you got a session, and the session ends. You do a date with this artist, but then it ends, and you got to keep the bills keep on coming. So when I joined this band, David Lindley that was the steel guitar player and many different instruments with Jackson Brown, and he had his band El Rayo X with Jorge Calderon. So I auditioned one time in LA in Sunset, and he asked me to do the tour, and it was like reggae and ska and blues and rock. And so so I had to give Tanya notice that I was not going to be able to do the following tour or gigs. And John Pena was playing with this drummer in LA, and he goes, man, like, come on down the house, and Wally's there, and I'm sure he'll help you, because I want to like to actually not burn a bridge. Whoever's coming, I would help them, just like Taco Hirano helped me when I came to with Lindsey Buckingham. Taco was a big-hearted person. He showed me the electronics, and no, don't do that, and over here, make sure this. So it was Greg Bissonette. So Greg Bissonette was doing gigs around town and all that. And I says, hey, man, I know you play Brazilian, and I know you play bossa nova, play jazz and all that. So he came to the house, and we had an 8-track, a VHS, I'm sorry, a VHS, and we put it in. It was a couple of gigs, and this one, this, and this one, that. And he did a bunch of gigs with Tanya. And then not long after that, he joined the David Lee Roth band.
Right.
But, I mean, a lot of people don't know that. And now he's with Ringo, which is not David Lee Roth with, so basically the same thing with Greg, which is a guy that I admire. I mean, he basically is a tempo groove styles. I mean, he comes in, what are we doing? What tempo is this song? Let's find a groove that feels good. And what do you want me to play here? What style? Is it Brazilian Tania Maria, shuffle, R&B, funk, jazz, hip hop? And so that is a perfect example of like when we were in the trenches in LA. I met in some of those weddings and casuals and all that, a lot of musicians that later on, you do connections and continue. And so it's all basically the same thing, like what Louis Bellson said. Play your drums no matter what gig it is, and make it believe that it's going to be your last day on earth.
Right.
You have been grateful, and just touch that instrument and go, man, thank you. Because I mean, this drum set right here that I got in the 80s, this guy, I mean, all due respect to my family, my kids, my wife, this drum set from the 80s has been with me longer than many of my relationships. And when I cried, and when I was sad, and when I was, had the blues and the highs and the lows, that's why I put it here in this room, because it's the drum set with more memories. It has been with me through divorces, through my new marriage, in different houses that I lost. And playing this drum set, I went down, and this drum set got me up again, doing the tours, the gigs. And it's almost like I can come to my room and basically have therapy.
Oh, man.
We play rhythms. I don't have to talk therapy with the drum set, but it's basically like therapy, because there's times, as you know, that somebody dies and you're feeling not good, you're sick or whatever. During the pandemic, we were here recording Chicago's album, but I also recorded with David Lindley, Luis Conte, you name it. This drum set has been to Australia, has been with me to everywhere. To Jimmy Barnes in Australia, I took this drum set. So basically, your instruments is like your voice. And even though, again, it's like a bunch of heads and shells and cymbals, that's your voice. And your voice has emotion. So that voice brings out the emotion that you're putting into that instrument.
Oh, man.
And so that's I know I went pretty deep, but sometimes you don't realize it, that some of these instruments mean a lot, not because of the material that they are, because of the life you have lived with them and through them.
Indeed. It's as if they're part of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. That's so well put. Um, I mean, I'll go to my overhead. That drum kit's been with me for a really, really long time too. I mean, this is one of my newer kits, but I mean, it's for the last 20 years. Yeah. And now it stays in this room, but I've taken that drum set, as far as I could. But that's my salvation right there. I come down
Yeah.
here, I'm in the moment, everything else fades away, and that's it. You do it.
Yeah, it's you have your personal relationships and all that. That's why when you were mentioning earlier, the reason I really love I always had a saying, I haven't said it in a long time, but like my sports is drumming, my therapy is music, my hobby is collecting percussion instruments and vintage stuff. And so basically I put it all in one. My business is the music business. So it's all, so I work out on the drums, and I work out because I have to drum.
Right.
So it's two different things. I work out on the drums and off the drums so I can play better. And, my nutrition and everything so I can be the best at what I do. But, the hobby and reading and history and all that. So like the history of each instrument, and every instrument has a story. And that's why when I go to my dad's house, some of those timbales and some of those instruments, they all have a story.
Yeah.
And like this Rogers drum set. So it's you're making your life story through your instruments. I mean, like your drum set that you just showed me, and everything is it means at least to me is very meaningful.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. And I think it's as you're saying about all these different elements, it's all interdependent. It's sort of like the drumming is dependent upon you being in shape, keeping yourself healthy. It's all interdependent. It's like if one of those things breaks, the rest of it's going to crumble, right?
Exactly. Do you know that story of Abraham Laboriel when he actually got into with the Yamaha bass, and he was doing a session in LA, and he was playing, Abraham Laboriel Sr, not Junior, the father playing the bass, and people in the booths going, "Man, what is that, Abe?" And goes, "It's a Yamaha blah 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 bass." Like, "Oh my God, it sounds awesome." He goes, "Yeah, thank you." And then, so he was playing, and they kept on going, "Man, that bass, I love the finish. Oh my God, that bass sounds awesome. Here, let me," and they played the bass on the speakers and all that. And they were like just raving about this bass. And all of a sudden he put the bass outside and put it on the stand. And then he went in the booth and he goes, "Hey guys, how's that bass sound now?" And everybody started laughing because it's just a Yamaha bass.
Exactly.
But the minute he puts it on, it takes a whole new life. So that's the thing. The Yamaha bass of Abe Laboriel is just a bass unless he plays it. So, then he puts his emotions and his signature. Now, with that being said, I'm sure that if you have 10 other great bass players playing the same bass, we all sound different.
Yeah.
We sound, that's the beautiful thing about the drums, the acoustic drums, that it's like, it's the touch, the stick, the technique that you use, the emotion. Of course, heads matter. I tell my wife, like, every time I buy a new snare, you can buy a new pair of shoe, because drummers will always need a new snare, and women will always need a new pair of shoes. It doesn't matter how many they have. But the thing is that snares, I get a snare drum and immediately I go like, I wonder if I change the head to a thinner head, or if I play a louder gig, let me change this. But then it doesn't work as much as the other snare. And, it's just so, they're all so picky, like I call it the ladies, they're
Right.
like over here, in a stand, a 6-inch, a 7-inch, and they all have almost like, it's like they talk to you. If I want to do a session here and I want something really delicate with a lot of rolls and all that, I have specific snares for that. And there's one actually, is the DW, I forgot they call it, with the steel rims. The shell has the steel. So it's like wood in the center and steel in the edges. It's a steel edge. that's the loudest drum, and it's really heavy. And Robert Lamb out loud does not allow that snare to be on stage. When Tris in Boston was playing, he had one of those and he played it. We put a plexiglass next to him. He goes, that's the loudest snare drum I've ever heard in my career. And because of that snare, we used plexiglass on the side of Robert for a long time.
Wow.
And finally we took it off because I'm not playing it.
That was the die-cast hoops on it?
No, not even die-cast. It's regular power, but the rim, the edge is completely, I forgot what they call it exactly, but it's like steel edged. And
steel
it's just,
bearing edge?
Yeah, the bearing edges are made with the steel.
Wow.
And then wood in the center. And that snare is heavy and loud, and it's the loudest snare I own. And so if I'm going to do a gig that is like a lot of guitar playing and loud, I'll bring that sucker. I have to work. I'll work less. I just go like this and wow, everybody will be, oh my God.
That's great.
You know, so make the instrument work for you, right?
Oh my God. By the way, Ned Smith from out west saying before what you were saying about the drum set and how, you know, it was on the journey with you. He was just commenting how transparent that was and vulnerable. So that was kind of cool. He appreciated that. Mr. Lindsay McDonald with us, enjoying the chat that we're having. Ned Smith also said steel bearing edge, by the way.
Okay.
Don O'Keefe in Connecticut hanging with us. He said if he could only read one or two books on the history and evolution of Afro-Cuban music, what would you recommend? Or listening references?
My God. So there's a book, and right now it's actually totally translated into English. There's a book by Fernando Ortiz. This is a very old book, and it's called The Africanization of Cuban Music.
Oh, wow.
Africanization of Cuban music. And so he's the first guy that documented photos of Afro-Cuban music and African music. Because, you know, I don't want to get really deeply into it because it'll be like another hour. But, you know, in different sections of Cuba, and the same thing happened in Brazil and the Caribbean. And that's why people don't understand that, you know, like with the slave trade, not all the slaves were from the same region.
Right.
So you had different nations. It's like, say, like the Native American, right? You had the Apache and the Cherokee and the Sioux. And so those were different nations in Utah and different parts. So some of them spoke very different language.
Right.
And they had different customs, different colors, different. The same thing happens all over. Like I've seen that in China, different tribes. So like different rhythms. Say like you had like a Bantu rhythm. And for example, one little example, you know, like a Bantu rhythm in origin, you can actually hear that rhythm from before the Europeans came to this country. But the rhythm is popular. So you got like,
right.
So Martinique, Guadeloupe has that rhythm and they call it zouk. And then Puerto Rico, you have a style of that and it's within the bomba. And then other people now they call it reggaeton and everybody calls it. But the thing is basically in root, it's like a Bantu rhythm. It's almost like if you, that's why I love for example, I've been watching this Stanley Tucci, what's it called? Searching for Italy. And the other day I saw a show on Napoli, the beginning of the pizza. It was because of the cholera pandemic. It was safer to fry the bread to kill it of germs and bacteria. So now you had this fried bread. The original pizza almost was like an empanada. You put the sauce, the basil, the cheese, and then you kind of like roll it kind of like an empanada. And then in Napoli, there's a restaurant over there that I went while I do a clinic. There was the first guy that opened it up into what they call an empanada that is open. And it's like a little, what we call now like marguerite pizza for one person. Oh, but then, of course, that developed into different things. In the United States, the Italian American created the big pie as we know the pizza now. But the thing is, so right now, if you actually put avocado and black beans and rice, and you do this and you put that and you put that, I mean, it's not traditional anymore. It's not Napolitano pizza, the one that started, but it's still a pizza. Right. So you cannot call it, this is a machu machu, and you look at it, you go, yeah, but it's a pizza. No, but it's this. So it starts being something completely different. Like once you call it reggaeton, souk, this rhythm, that rhythm, at the end is a rhythm that is African Bantu in origin.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like what I like is like the more deeper you dig in the roots, you're going to find so many great rhythms. And by the way, just because you play drum set, it doesn't mean that you can actually listen to percussion. You don't have to be Giovanni Hidalgo on congas or a virtuoso or anything like that, but just to know the rhythms and grab rhythms and transfer it into what we call the drum set.
Right.
Because as you know, the original drum set was a symphonic bass drum, a military snare drum, Chinese tom-toms, Turkish cymbals. Is a world music conglomeration.
World instrument right there, yeah.
Right. And so and then we transfer different instruments, different rhythms into the drum set and different ethnicities.
Right.
Brought it to the drum set. Some a little more like rudimental. The people that were doing tap dancing brought the tap dancing language into the military snare drum, and it's jazz drumming.
Right.
Because that's what it is. You got Irish clogging and tap dancing, American tap dancing. It came from the Irish clogging. But then when you hear the tap dancers, that's why Steve Gadd, Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson, they were all tap dancers.
All dancers, right, yeah.
And they transfer, that was the root. Now they know what to bring to the snare drum. And I think it's fascinating. It's beautiful. I love it. It's my hobby. Even if I can never play drums anymore for whatever reason, I will still read and watch. And it's fascinating to me to study the history of music. You study the history of food, people, culture, dancing.
Right. As you said about your father now, he's not playing so much, but he's constantly learning and investigating and seeing what people are up to. He knows who the newest guys are. It's like, it's the passion, it's the love,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you're aware of this book. I'm just going to show you this real quick, but my buddy Klaus Hessler put out this book, Taladiddle.
Oh my God, I love Klaus.
Klaus is great, right? And this is conical counting. So like the Indian counting method meets Swiss rudimental drumming. So he's got
oh wow.
Claudio Spieler is doing the conical counting over rudimental drumming as like duets. It's amazing.
Oh, crazy. I gotta check it out because Klaus, I did a drum camp. I think in the south of Germany, closer to Austria. And I believe, I think Alex was there and Klaus and a bunch of drummers, percussionists, everybody. But Klaus just fascinated me. First of all, he's so fresh and different.
Yeah.
And the way he plays he just basically can do anything he wants with his limbs.
Yeah.
And he's the nicest guy and a great teacher.
He's a great teacher.
Yes. Yeah. If you don't know about Klaus Hessler, he's on Instagram.
Yep.
And on social media.
Yes, search him out. And he also has a thing called open-minded drumming, which is a course that he does, and he does a lot of clinics. And he's cousins with Annika Niels, which is pretty crazy, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're cousins.
Oh, fantastic!
So, yeah. Klaus is great, man. Love him.
Nice.
So I'm gonna let you get to eat soon, but I'm gonna give you just quick speed round questions, really fast. Like these are one-word answers, if you want them to be. They don't have to be one word. But so and thank you for being so generous with your time and your stories. And I try to keep it fresh and really just talk about music because that's why we do this. We love music, and it's the inspiration and what draws us to doing this. And I mean, your story is incredible. I think we should, I'll hit you up again to do another episode if you would be so kind.
Oh yeah, different questions, or
Yeah,
we can
absolutely.
talk more about. There's so many things to talk about. Not only setup, drum set, gear, but also concepts of different artists and challenges that drummers, tricks that you have to do. To prepare, and those are things that it's not like I'm a genius wise man, but a lot of them were mistakes that I made and gigs that didn't go well and then I go, oh man, I'll never do that again. And those are lesson learned that I learned, but also listening to other musicians that are older than me that taught me. That's the other thing. If you're a student, just listen. I never said no to anybody. Ask questions.
Right.
I'm sure if you actually bump into Dom anywhere, it goes like, Dom, blah, 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 and Dom will tell you right there. I mean, I have never seen anybody, including Steve Gadd, that went, oh, I don't have time. No.
Right.
He's always opened his mouth and basically has poured like wealth of information. Ask the questions, seek the knowledge.
100%. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned Steve Gadd, because Peter Retzlaff, a good friend of mine here in New York, who's an educator, great drummer, educator, who taught at the Drummers Collective here in Manhattan. He told a story about when he first came to New York, and how he had actually phoned up somehow. He got a hold of Steve Gadd, and Steve actually stayed on the phone with him and gave him a lot of life lessons and good advice, where he happened to somehow get a hold of him, and he was really generous speaking with him. And so
Steve is a sweetheart.
Yeah, such a sweet guy. And
the next time I'll tell you another story of how I met, 2 stories of Steve Gadd, the next episode.
Yeah. I mean, what a sweetheart, right? And this is it. Mentors that we encounter in our lives. Like Dom for me is such a mentor. Learning just about life from people. It's not always just the drumming stuff. It's everything. It's life lessons, because at the end of the day, you're working with people, right? So
exactly,
you have to be a good human being, or at least it helps.
That's it. That's my thing. Is on stage and off stage.
Yeah.
If you're on tour, you're on stage and then you're off stage like 21 hours.
Yeah.
The band, and then you're like 2 hours of playing music.
Yep. And the rest of the time you have to coexist on a bus, or in hotels, and
Yeah.
So
restaurants, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Speaking of restaurants, I know you did some cooking over the pandemic. That'll be another question. You got into kind of working on your culinary skills, right? And
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm always doing that.
Yeah. And you make a lot of food analogies, which I think is interesting. Chef analogies, food analogies.
Yeah, it really is. So like the other day I had to cook for the first time for like 6 people, and
wow.
I got a recipe. So basically that's like the music. You got the material. Now you got to practice. So sometimes I practice on myself. I try it on me first. I practice, and sometimes it's, I didn't do such a great job. I'll try it again. And then finally I got it down, and then it's showtime. 6 people came in.
Wow.
So I actually did this recipe for filet mignon. I'm in Kentucky right now, northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area.
Right.
You put a filet mignon on a little plastic bag with bourbon and maple syrup and let it sit there for a whole day. The next day you take it out, throw away the juices, and then you put it on a pan, and then you put a little maple syrup on top of the steaks, and then you put the salts and whatever you're going to put in it. And that sucker might not even need a steak knife.
Wow.
It's just so tender, and so people don't know exactly what is it that it, and basically of course the alcohol evaporates,
right,
but it just tenderizes the meat to the point where you don't even need so that's like showtime. You prepare for the showtime.
You're making me very hungry. And by the way, my student Lucia is here. My student Lucia Seminara. She's 13-year-old drummer. Just got into the high school jazz band and all that stuff. So
Oh,
great.
nice.
Young drummer, very talented kid. And by the way, speaking about mentors and stuff, so Bernard Purdy was on my show recently. He's a great guy.
Man.
I know Bernard for a long time, and Lucia's family happened to make a connection with Bernard also, and he was sweet enough to come to Lucia's gig at a local club here in Staten Island at 13 years old with Bernard Purdy in the audience watching her play with her band. So
Man.
that's a good guy who took the time to come down and support young kids, doing their thing. So it's pretty amazing. You know?
I love Bernard as a person and as a drummer, because we
Great
hung
drummer.
out at the NAMM shows
Yeah.
in the 90s. And of course, he's like, I mean, his what he has done for drumming and all the grooves and everything, people still trying to perfect the Bernard Purdy shuffle, which is one thing that anybody that wants to do the beat Rosanna, I actually send them Home at Last and Babylon Sisters.
Indeed. In fact,
listen to this verse, and then accelerate it into Rosanna.
yeah, exactly. It's really funny. I'm writing a book called The Shuffle Evolution. And so it's kind of going through all the changes and the technical and groove changes of the shuffle over time. So it's really fun drawing from all these different shuffles that have shown up in history,
I have some little tips for you if you want them. So, have you ever seen the write-up with the pencil that Jeff Porcaro wrote for John Good?
Right.
He wrote it. John Good asked him, man, what the hell is it that you were doing? So he wrote it with a pencil. So I have a copy of that. But, like the main thing that I have it in one of my lessons, like right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. That goes no.
Right.
So that's another old African rhythm. So you play it in different drums, different African drums. You are playing Rosanna beat in a way.
Right.
So it's a really fascinating shuffle rhythms. The 6/8 rhythm family.
Right.
So, but yeah, I definitely. I can't wait till you do that, because that's so interesting. I would love to see it.
Oh, I will definitely show you the manuscript that I have so far.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so cool. All right, so I'm gonna do these couple of little questions. So, and some of these we already covered, so I'm gonna skip through a few. But you mentioned the first record that you bought, which was that Chicago record, or Chicago Transit Authority (CTA). What is the first concert that you attended in your youth, if you can remember? And I mean, you have musicians in your family, so it might have been your own family.
Yeah.
But maybe what was the first rock show that you saw? Because I know you were.
Okay, so like of course I went to a lot of concerts with my dad, like in Las Vegas in those days at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
For the musicians at the Tropicana Lounge, Don Ellis, big band, Duke Ellington with Rufus Speedy Jones. And those were concerts I attended with my dad. Louis Bellson's big band with Pearl Bailey, his wife.
Oh my God.
So there was like a Buddy Rich big band, of course. So it's like a lot of big bands and a lot of I attended with my wife, with my dad. But in Las Vegas in the 70s, no rock band played the Strip.
Right.
That was, like Tuxedo, Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Johnny Mathis. And then outside of the Strip at the convention center of Las Vegas, that's where the concerts happened. So one of my first concerts I remember, and I don't know which ones they were in that order. I definitely saw Chicago in 1974 there. But before that, I think one of the first ones, believe it or not, I think it was at the convention center. It was the Guess Who.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the band Guess Who.
Yeah.
I also saw Steely Dan with Jeff Porcaro on drums at that same convention center.
Oh my God.
I also saw Earth, Wind and Fire with El Chicano, which I played later on in the years. So that was in the same Rotunda Convention Center place. So one of those, actually, I think it was the Guess Who.
Wow, that's
because
amazing.
I loved them when I was and in those days it was like $20 a ticket.
I know right now. Well, We won't even
Oh,
mention where
God.
it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, very cool. So who was your first drum hero? Not family member. Who's your first drum hero?
Um, yeah, hard to say because there was so many at once.
Yeah, you were
So coming
inundated with
from all over.
everybody.
So, I mean, like, I have to really say Ringo because like that he got me into the music,
Right.
that of my era. I mean, it was the Rolling Stones at Charlie, then of course the Guess Who was Crosby, Stills and Nash,
Yeah.
and that was the music that I was listening. But the very first one in the '60s, it was definitely the Beatles.
Right.
That was a fever, and so Ringo, it was just like that was the guy, and so I wanted to play that like Ringo, so I can play Beatles tunes, and third, music like the Beatles were doing. As the Beatles grew, of course, I loved, you follow from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Come Together.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, like Charlie Watts, and then later on, other drummers came in, Emerson, Lake and Palmer,
Oh yeah.
and Sly and the Family Stone, and it's just, it just, and then, but later on, of course, like I was just talking about it because it's gonna play here in a couple of weeks. When Billy Cobham came out, it was like
Yeah.
revolution. It was a revolutionary thing.
Oh my God.
And everybody, I think even Tony Williams changed, Alphonse Mouzon changed, but Tony Williams and a lot of these jazz drummers came later for me. Buddy Rich was later, Louis Bellson. I didn't understand the jazz.
Yeah.
Then once I started understanding, swing and Max Roach, and then I graduated to Elvin Jones because I didn't understand
Yeah.
at one point, and then Tony Williams with Miles, and then Tony Williams later
Yeah.
with his albums, Believe It, and
Yeah.
Legs, and all those incredible albums. But then that era, early '70s, that came Steve Gadd with all the recordings. And I always loved a lot of the drummers in those days that I didn't even know who they were, like three mainly. Stax, which was Al Jackson.
Yep.
Muscle Shoals, which is Roger Hawkins.
Yeah, man.
And Motown, which was Benny Benjamin. But I didn't know who these guys were. I just loved the music I was hearing. So in a way, I was a fan of drummers I didn't know. And then
That's
later
amazing.
on, I researched who they were, and I hung out with Roger Hawkins in Nashville, and I picked his brain a lot, and it was really interesting. We'll talk about it some other time, but
yeah, and we should talk about maybe next time the Muscle Shoals documentary, which is like unbelievable. Like it just, even the way it's directed and produced, just gives you this feeling, this interesting feeling.
It's definitely an American documentary.
Yeah, yeah.
And with Roger, the reason I met him is through my friend Tom Rody, because I was in Nashville with Steve Winwood, and Roger Hawkins did Steve Winwood tour. Not Steve Winwood, Traffic.
Oh, okay.
He did Traffic. There's a Live at the Santa Monica Civic, 1971, 72, Traffic. And then, of course, because I was playing with Traffic, Roger was there at Steve Winwood's birthday. So I came in and let's leave the party and sit in a quiet bench. And we talked drums for a long time.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's stories there, I'm sure. All right. One or two other ones. We covered most of the questions, even the weirdest or worst kind of gig. You mentioned about something that was challenging earlier. And what was your first gig, by the way?
Well, my first gig that got paid, and actually one related to the other, that was not famous with an artist. Yeah. Basically, I started playing percussion in a dance school in Las Vegas for $9 an hour. And the thing is, in that dance school, this famous choreographer, Ron Lewis, that did Casino de Paris and a lot of shows, he was a hot guy at that time. And he had a boot camp class of all these girls and guys that don't get to dance in the Vegas shows. They don't get to really dance. So basically
Right.
they come to this class and it's like really, really crazy stepping and dance moves and stuff like that. So I had my percussion with me. So I would go like a couple of times a week and 5, 6, 7, 8, boom, boom, and then it's accelerate to like, okay, let's try the whole thing. 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're listening to
Yeah.
tempos because you have to really make sure that the dancer and the tempo is correctly, because so even in dancing, tempos are important. But then that led to, with the help a little bit of my father and Ron Lewis, which is the choreographer, he choreographed Debbie Reynolds' show. So when I was 16, I was working with Debbie Reynolds in Las Vegas. I had to get a sheriff's card and get in the musicians union, which I recently got the card that my dad signed. He co-signed for me.
Oh, wow.
And you have to have a sheriff's card because you're a minor and you can't go to casinos and all that. So
Right.
I did the Debbie Reynolds show, dinner show, went to the dressing room, went to the commissary and ate, with the musicians, listened to stories and all that, did my homework, did this second show and went home through the back door. And, that led to many other gigs and recommendations and all that. So basically I worked professionally all the way through high school. And I was the oldest of 5. So I was helping my dad at the same time, So the better I got and the more versatile and I can work more, I was in a way helping my family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like when I entered college, I was already working shows in the Strip. And it was on my second year of college that the challenge happened. Lola Falana wanted to go on the road and get a drummer. And it was not just working Vegas, it was working all over the place. And I told my dad was unhappy. He told me, stars will come and go, but college degree is only now. It's only once. You get your degree now. I go, Dad, did you ever sit behind the drum set behind Lola Falana dancing? There's no way I'm going to say no to this gig. So I didn't finish my degree, but I went on the road, and in a way that was like 1976. So I got the degree from the University of the Streets,
Yeah, man.
from the University of the Road. So it
No
has to
regrets,
stop.
right? No regrets with
No
that.
regrets, really, no regrets.
Listen, your father's, intention was very, very good, but you followed your heart and you knew that you wanted to play, so you did it,
Yeah, he was right. I try to finish the degree and correspondence courses, and even now, and I try to go back to UNLV and get my credits and see how can I, but it's very difficult. He was right, absolutely right. Once you become an adult and life gets complicated, you ain't gonna get that college degree.
No.
It's gonna be difficult. And so, but with that being said, it was the destiny, and no regrets.
Yeah, man. And listen, you've had such a diverse career, and continue to have such a diverse and long career. I mean, that's no easy feat in this business, and it comes down to people, relationships, preparedness, and your lineage. Just being so immersed in different kinds of music has provided you this great path of playing for everything from Barry Manilow to Traffic to Chicago. I mean, it's incredible the different pathways that have come through your career.
Yeah, it's and you learn that's why gear is important. Different sounds.
Yeah.
Try to bring the drum set that, like the styles, like here, for example, there was like some jazz trios and all that. So I have my Sabian Artisan,
Yeah.
panhammer, like quiet, like
very Turkish sounding cymbals. And then with Chicago, it's louder, horn bands, big band, louder. I get my AAX and, loud bell. So you start in your mind, you have almost like Baskin and Robbins.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to do a kids show. Okay, well, the bubblegum ice cream and all the little flavors that the kids love, you got to take those. And so if the gig is, depending on the gig, you bring your gear, and then you bring the style to play on the gear that is right. And then you got to be open to bring extra gear, because as we talked about it before, like Joe Sample, Lindsey Buckingham, sometimes you get very picky artists.
Yeah.
And they want this. And can you lower your snare? You have a higher one. Give me a minute.
Do you have 13 drum kits that you can program for the Lindsey?
Right. Yeah.
By the way,
with that being said, it's really interesting. I'll leave you with this point. I used to have about 14 drum sets.
Wow.
At one point in my life. And now I downsize to versatile drum sets.
Yeah.
That I can interchange, and they can be tuned high for jazz or Latin and low for funk and rock and stuff like that. So, you learn your gear really well and know that you can interchange and detune high, or, change each snare to different levels. One rolls better than others. So if I'm playing jazz, for example, I have the power tone right here with my Rogers kit. That snare drum, if you're not a drummer and you try a roll, you'll roll. I mean, it's almost like it goes like,
Nice.
Like, oh my God, I don't even have to practice rolls. Some snares are very hard to get a roll.
That's true.
And so, like, knowing your gear is important, and knowing your styles, so you know what to bring. And then tempos before I have lists. And again, this is might be my OCD side. When I work with Steve Winwood, that's like 40 years from Give Me Some Lovin', I'm a Man. He wrote when he was 17. Right. Spencer Davis Band, Traffic, Blind Faith, his solo career. I have all the tempos of all the albums and the live gigs that we did. Some of the tempos he wanted to change, and I have the list of what was those tempos. The same thing I've done, Santana, Robbie Robertson, Chicago. Beginnings were playing a little faster than the record. Does anybody really know what time it is? It's the same tempo. So, I actually have analyzed and why this worked at this tempo and it's not working now, because they want it faster. So you have to react different to the same song. You cannot play Danny Serafin licks at a slower tempo that worked in 1969.
That's a good point.
These guys are 2022, and Robert is the writer of the song. He comes to me and says, the more the groove, the straight groove, the better for me. And I'm going, but beginnings have all those great fills and that drum break. I mean, so basically I actually sometimes even push to bring some of that Danny thing to some of the songs of Chicago, if it fits in with the guys, because some of them want to change a little bit. Sting and the Police, I went to a concert, none of the tempos were the same as the record.
Right.
And the arrangements were a little different.
Yeah.
So artists are artists, and they have the right to do whatever the hell they want to do with their compositions. So some people go, you're not playing what Danny plays, or I'm not working for you.
That's right.
I'm not getting paid from you. I have 4 bosses in a way: Lee Lockney, Jimmy Pankow, and they all write their compositions. And if Jimmy comes to me and said, in the ballet, make me smile, don't do this, do that. Okay, that's it.
Right.
It's done. And Lee Lockney, Jimmy, Robert Lamb, and our manager has a lot of sometimes sayings to do. Even on our drum solo, he says, because he's like a football coach. He looks at the crowd, and we're playing, and he's not looking at us. He's looking at the crowd, looking at the reaction. He goes, when you guys do the solo, when you start doing that cymbal stuff, that's when they go crazy. So why don't you do a little extra? And
Nice.
at the beginning, it was like, Now he's telling me how to play the drums. But, you got to take every observation. And, he was right. We did it a little extra, and it frenzies the crowd to like a craziness, like, whoa. It's funny because you can do really hard things and all that, and people go, oh, that's really tough. Oh my God, that's really great. But when you start doing this and that, and for me, it's easier. It's just tricks.
Yeah.
You go like this and you go like that, and you do it longer, the crowd goes, whoa.
Yeah. Because it's visual. Like,
right.
And you probably, from your point of view behind the drums, you don't really see that crowd reaction, but he's out there looking. And so he's like, oh, that's when they go nuts. So even though that's the easy thing that just looks like flash, it's what works, right? It's what
exactly.
It's the
so
show.
You have to listen.
Yeah.
He's our manager, and he has different points from different points that we don't see, like you said. So, I work for whoever I work for, and I give it my all and become a team player. And then after work, you're a nice guy, and you still got to cooperate and be nice. I mean, to the crew that works so hard for us. So if you're an asshole with the crew, it's going to go downhill. You're going to get famous for being an asshole. So so don't do that. And then, I think that more people have lost gigs because they were great musicians, but they were impossible to get along with.
Right.
So they said, don't call this asshole anymore, please. And they didn't.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great drummers, but the package deal of being great on stage and being great as a human being off stage.
Right.
And that matters. So I'm working on both.
And that, that comes up I think even more often. People will say, man, I met Walfredo. He is such a nice guy. They'll go, he's an amazing percussionist and drummer, but he's so nice. It's like that goes a really long way in this life, man.
Well, it makes me feel good that I can help people. And I never said no to anybody, even on social media. I have no idea. It's like, Wally, what kind of head do you use on that second snare drum? And like, I just basically just help them out. And so yeah, so that's Wally World.
Yeah, man. Well, I just want to mention like the gear that you're using. So of course, Sabian cymbals, LP Latin percussion, Remo drum heads, Regal tip.
Well, not anymore.
Oh, no more Regal tip.
Yeah, because after the pandemic, I couldn't get my sticks, and
okay.
I had a signature stick, and then I believe they're selling the company and all that, and it was just a tough time for them. Okay. It's still my friends and their family.
Yeah, man.
Always, Carol and Joe Collado.
Yep.
But I had to basically do what I needed for the tour, so I went with Vic first.
Okay, so you're with Vic now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gets interesting in the business, now these days with companies owning companies and all this kind of stuff.
Right. Well, Siljan owns Vic Firth.
Right.
Joe was Collado. Regal Tip was just a company, and they had a tough time.
Yeah, man.
And I hung out as much as I could.
Yeah.
But I have a job to do.
Absolutely.
So, like, if Ace cannot provide my pliers, I go to Home Depot. If Home Depot can, I go to Lowe's.
That's it.
It's just that simple. And so, and then Remo, and then I have like little different companies, of course, Roland products.
Yep.
And I've been using for a long time, and Simpad and sleeve you put on the
the cymbal sleeves.
Yeah, cymbals. And just like a lot of big fat snare. I like their.
Yeah, I love those. I have them all over these kits.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great.
I love the effect.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm missing one or here and there, but you actually had a Focusrite. I actually use it to record.
Focusrite's great.
Audix microphones.
Audix, yeah, man.
I have most of them. These are all Audix, and that's about it, really.
Nice. Man, such a great hang. I love getting into the stories. I was going to go down another Maracatu Brazilian rabbit hole, but we're going to save that one.
For the next one.
Yeah, exactly, man. Such a fun hang. Thank you to everybody that hung with us tonight. There was a lot of people in the chat. I know I didn't get to everybody, so I apologize. But it was really fun seeing John Wooten in here, and Lindsay McDonald, and Anthony Cucina, and my sister at the end.
Awesome.
I just noticed she's in the chat. And
Awesome.
Ned Smith, who's a great educator, also somebody that I've done a lot of tech consulting with. And one of these days we'll work on your tech stuff together. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. I need all the help.
Nice. And big love and shout out again to Dom. And
Yes.
I'll see you guys on the next episode, which I don't think I'm streaming next week. I think I'm off next week, and then I'll be back the week after. My good buddy Mark Feldman, who's up in Boston now, living in Boston, who's a great New York drummer.
Oh, I love Mark Feldman.
Yeah, great guy, good
Thanks.
friend. He's going to be on the show this week. I will be at Joe Rosenblatt's studio up in Rhode Island. So
Say hello to Joe.
I'm gonna record that. I'm gonna record some video of that and share it with the community. So that'll be super fun. And yeah, thanks to everybody that hung out tonight. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here.
All right, man. Good night, everybody. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to